Welcome to Face2Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face2Face. So my next interview is with Jonas Gulbrandsen, and we talk about his new film, Valley of Shadows. Typically, this is not the type of film that would probably draw me in. It's a delightfully creepy, quote, Scandinavian Gothic fable. It's something that reminded me a lot of some of the fairy tales I read and was, I guess, were read to me as a kid. It's a stunningly beautiful film, gorgeous cinematography, and as the phrase says from the Toronto International Film Festival, delightfully creepy. I think you're going to be engaged not only in the film, but you're going to be drawn in by the conversation. Jonas and I talk a lot about Freud. We talk about the subconscious wish and about realism and how ambiguity is important. And for Jonas, questions are far more important than the answers, and how this is really a coming of age film. And there's a sense in which Jonas talks about how he likes Dickens's characters in his storytelling and that cognitive dissonance that seems to exist. And we talk about fatalism and how art and intellectualism and spirituality are usually, if not always, in conflict. I think you're going to really enjoy this film and conversation coming right up. The film's called Valley of Shadows. Don't forget, davidpecklive.com for more information about my speaking and my writing, face2facelive.ca for interviews about social change and about things that, matter, certainly matter to me, and I'm hoping matter more and more to a new audience out there for Face2Face. And also rabble.ca as well for podcasting, writing, blogging, news reporting around issues that matter. Coming right up, Jonas Gulbrandsen and his new film, Valley of Shadows. Well, welcome to Face2Face. We are joined by another very special guest today here at the Toronto International Film Festival. I think it's day 1.5. We're day 2, Friday, and Jonas Gulbrandsen is here today to talk about his new film, Valley of Shadows, the world premiere here at the festival. Jonas, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice. It's a big day.
It is a big day, and and the film premieres tonight.
Yeah, premieres tonight, 9:45.
So how are you feeling about that right now? Let's get that out of the way.
I'm good. I'm happy it's finished. It's been a long ride, long journey. So it's really nice to be able to send it off and let it live its life by its own.
Live its life on its own.
On its own.
That's pretty interesting. I want to come back to that because I think that's pretty interesting. I want to talk a little bit about that. The storytelling and the crafting of it and where the idea comes from and then how it develops and how it develops even differently than you imagined.
Yeah.
You know, have you sat down and actually watched it from beginning to end?
Too many times.
Is that looking for that last little tweak?
Oh yeah, we've been tweaking, but it's been so many different phases from color to music to everything. It's like it was a big work, and I reached high, when it comes to craft and everything. It was very demanding, and a lot of tweaking and a lot of work and a lot of small details that had to come in place. And
Well, it's a meticulously crafted film, and it's a beautiful film. It's gorgeous to look at. The cinematography is absolutely stunning. The contrast, the lighting, it's absolutely gorgeous. And congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
and welcome to Toronto. It's I love the fantasy-like nature of it. I love the mystery. I love the wonder. I love this way of storytelling through the eyes of us. I mean, your establishing shot. We're in a boy's room.
Yeah.
We've got colored crayon drawings on the wall. I mean, I have a son who's 12 and a daughter who's 9. I've lived that. Most parents have. Is that coming from your childhood to some degree?
Yeah, I think so. I think the room is a special place. It's where you feel safe as a child, and I thought it was the perfect moment to how to establish the film as well somehow, because it's kind of like it gives associations to to kind of peacefulness and safeness. I would say the boys' room and the toys and everything. It's like also where a lot of things starts in life. It's where you spend your time and space. Like that place. It's very. I think it's an important space for everybody remember the first room somehow. I think
you're absolutely right. I mean, I can remember posters on the wall.
Yeah.
Which kind of play actually a significant role in this film.
Yeah.
Even posters on the wall, pictures on the wall, crayons, toys, puzzles, and I remember a sticker on so it's almost like an imprint.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, memories. I suppose.
Exactly.
How is memory for you sort of making an impact in the way that you've told this story? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I could start with saying that Freud said that dreams are subconscious wish, and that's kind of like the basic thing that it started out from, and you know, a small boy which is starting to discover the world, and all sometimes you think you remember somebody, but you don't really know if you met him or this kind of things as well. You kind of and this is kind of, I don't want to go too much further on that, but that's kind of like
we don't want to give too much away.
That's very important for kind of the idea also of the film. Like when you're a child, you have memories, but you don't know if when you're older if some of those memories are created or if they sometimes actually happen sometimes, you know, and I'm very fascinated by those things.
It is interesting, you know, when you tell stories as a family, I've found they kind of grow. The legend sort of grows every time they're told.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid hearing, and I've said it to our kids, oh yeah, I don't know that you guys actually remember that. I think you're telling something about a photo that you saw.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, right? So how does that affect how we actually, you know, live and move and build community with others? Kind of interesting, right?
And it's also the kind of a wish that you like, I didn't meet my grandfather, but I wish I met him.
Right.
And I have pictures of him, and I kind of feel that I met him somehow, but I don't. And that's kind of like a subconscious thing, I guess, as well. Like I hear so many stories, so those things have always been very.
It's such a beautiful film. And the colors and the contrast, and there's this sense of dread for me as well. It's a real kind of paradox because I'm with this young boy. I'm alongside.
That's good.
You know, and it's but it was, you know what, the mystery and the wonder of it, I think, is what for me drew me in, that magical sort of world that he was living in, even though it was very harsh and stark and very real, it seemed.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to say with realism, because I didn't want the film to be a magical, realistic piece, because ambiguity is very important for me. That's how it's said in English, ambiguity.
Yeah, ambiguity, absolutely.
And ambiguity is kind of a key word as well for me always.
Do you mean that as do you mean that as a person or as a filmmaker or both?
Both, I would say.
Yeah.
Very important, because it's, you know, how the world is. If you say for sure that something supernatural is here, for me it's, you know, the world is full of questions and we don't really know what's really here, and the questions are more important than the answers always. So also, going back to the ambiguity thing, like, or the magical realism, when you have a film, when you clearly say that something is existing in this world, some sort of supernatural, something fantastic really exists, it takes away kind of the mystery for me. You have to have the ambiguity as because the world is full of ambiguity. So
isn't that what happens to us as adults somewhere along the line?
Yeah.
And that, I think, comes out in the film, but somewhere along the line we lose that.
That's also why I wanted to tell
beauty,
it from
right?
The child's perspective is very important then, because he's 6 years old, and that's when, at that age, still are things a little bit blurry in some sort of sense, and that's very fascinating, because it's something that is very important, I think, when you're an adult as well. Those kind of that openness, living in the moment. That sounds like a cliche, but it is very true. I think.
Sounds cliche, but it's so true, right? We get so. I mean, so here's a really interesting thing. My son and I went to a concert recently, to a U2 concert, and he's probably too young really for the full experience. But we get on the train, and it was like a party that was going on in the train, and I realized it was Friday night versus Friday morning. And Friday morning at 6:45 a.m., everybody's either sleeping on their laptops or listening to music and not interacting. And it was like there was this spirit of play at night after work, and no play before work. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
And we get into these these patterns, these worldviews that shut everything, that shut the mystery and the wonder and the relationship down. Isn't that how it is for all of us on some level?
I think so, and I think as we get into those routines and also we get stuck on some sort of point of views, and I think you always have to go further and start questioning yourself or getting up on the left side of the bed instead of the right side of the bed in the morning.
Nice. Aslak, is that how you pronounce his name? So there's a great moment where Aslak goes, he's standing too close to a big bonfire.
Yeah.
And I think the adult there, not his dad, says, "Don't get too close or you might catch fire."
Yeah.
Right?
It's something like that. Yeah, like this
kind don't experience the world, right?
Yeah. There's always this thing that they warn us, as you warn your kids about, or and as you remember when you were a kid, when you have that cliff and you want to discover how far you can go to it, and as you get older, you get more. I think when you have kids yourself, you get more skeptical, of course, of the world as well.
Do you have kids?
No, I don't, but I don't have time. My brother has, so I'm kind of like
You're sort of you're an uncle then.
Yeah, and I'm uncle.
So the way you shot that room, I think you understand children pretty well.
Yeah.
Well, having been one, right, it always helps. Do you know what I love about his room? It's so cluttered, and there's so much going on, and yet on probably every level for Aslak, that is okay. Do you know what I mean? There's a disconnectedness, and yet it all kind of makes sense to him. In its simplicity, and its mystery and its beauty. I think that's really quite remarkable. Is this a metaphor for you about kind of walking into the dark wood? I mean, there's a couple of shots where the trees are dwarfing Aslak. They're just absolutely stunning. Is that me too? Is that me standing on the edge of the forest, wondering if I'm going to step in?
Fairy tales always have forest as kind of a element in their mythology, and you have stories like Hansel and Gretel and these kind of things that I always like. They're universal stories with like archetypal elements. This kind of I'm interested in writers like Bruno Bettelheim or these people who are they're going very analytical approach towards the fairy tales, but they're always speaking about their coming of age stories, and so the forest is a very important character in the film, I would say. It's a place where Aslak goes inside and is very kind of mesmerized by, but it's also in fairy tales they are symbolically used in some places where often kids get lost or meet somebody or things happen, and are they able to get out of the forest, or are they stuck in the forest for the rest of their life? There's some sort of, and that's kind of like a symbolic or metaphorical level. It's how we get lost in life, and somebody doesn't get out of the forest, somebody always stay in the forest.
To me there's a profound existential kind of thread running throughout your film that is I think a challenge to all of us. To step out into the future, to actually make a choice and walk headlong into our freedom. Do you know what I mean? At the risk of getting too philosophical, but I think any great film, any great story does that anyway.
But that's you're touching some of the truth of of what I was searching for and things.
Have you studied French or German existentialism?
I've some time ago though, so it's but I read here and there. I just try to keep updated sometimes, but it's
well, even great children's literature to me is deeply existential.
That's the thing. That's the thing about when especially fairy tales and those things are are existentialistic stories, which are coming of age stories. Where are you if kids, for example, very simply are if you're able to get away from your parents, or if they're going to be controlling the rest of your life. That's kind of very important also elements. If you have for this film, for example, Aslak is living with his mother, and I don't remember the scene when he's walking to sleepover for the first time.
Oh, to his friends.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because it's like he's asking. It's such a simple question, like, "Can I stay over at my friend's place tonight?" And she's kind of a little bit nervous. You don't know why she's nervous about it, but it's kind of like this moment first time when you're setting your child free somehow.
Right. Yeah.
He's just walking from the one house to the other, but maybe it's the first time he's sleeping over there, and this kind of things.
I got the sense that his friend was a bit of a troublemaker, maybe.
Yeah.
That's why mom doesn't want him with him, bad influence.
But it's also about that moment, if when you let your child go somewhere else for the first, and they're sleeping at some other person's place for one night, and you're not, and this kind of, and letting them, it's the first step for a child when you're, as they get older, you get more and more separated somehow, and then they're able to live by themselves, and that's
first step out into the forest.
Yeah, exactly. And not everybody is able to step away from their parents. They they get stuck there, and that's kind of also in the Indian, for example, culture, you had the spider woman underneath the earth who ate their children, and it's kind of the same elements of you getting eaten up by your parents if you're not able to get away from them and become your own person and become your own, this kind of.
It's a beautiful scene, by the way, with the spider under the bed.
Yeah.
and it's really quite lovely and remarkable, and I actually, that's pretty early on in the film, right? I was worried. At that point, I didn't know where we were going.
And it's a real spider, and it's a real spider. It's not an animated spider, which is an important factor as well, because there's always, now people are lazy and they put these kind of animated things in. So
CGI spiders.
CGI spiders.
Yeah,
you see it right away on their movements if it's CGI. I don't like CGI in general, because it's.
I don't like any spiders, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I don't like it either. So directing a spider is wasn't.
Directing a spider is without a doubt a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Is it about how much? I mean, maybe this is just a sort of riffing off the comment about mystery and wonder earlier, but for me, it's also very much about curiosity. What I find remarkable about this young boy is his willingness to walk straight into the unknown.
Yeah.
Uncertainty. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I'm going in anyway because this matters to me.
Yeah.
What's next matters to me.
No, absolutely. He, as we spoke about the room opening scene when he's in his room and the safety place, and then suddenly his friend comes, wakes him up and say, "Hey, I got something to show you." And then they go to this barn and they see something very, disturbing, and that's kind of the, it's the opening, but it's when the naivety meets the kind of, brutal aspects, and some sort of new world opens up for the boy, and that's also the moment when Aslak is like seeing like, oh wow, there's something outside here in the world that I have to discover, or there's something that is opening up for him somehow. And do
you think kids are more at ease with uncertainty than adults?
For sure, sometimes, but I can say but I would say yeah.
Just that the not knowing, right? I mean, don't we want to quantify everything? Don't I want to turn everything? It seems to me most of us want to turn everything into some sort of mathematical equation. We need a formula.
Yeah, I think
a combination.
Cognitive dissonance and this kind of things in life are very, as we get older, we start, we just accept things more, and it's, for me, that's the scary part of society in general, when we just accept things for what they are, and you don't, you stop questioning and stop, demanding things and things. I think that's a big problem of society in general, is how, as we get older, we stop questioning and just start to accept, and that's, for me, is very a very dangerous thing as well, I would say.
How much of what you see now in the film is bubbling to the surface in a way that you weren't intentional about? For instance, lines in the film, like, I love the line in the film, one of the characters says, I think to Aslak, says, "You have to be careful in the forest," and then there's a pause and he says, are you lost?
That's an interesting thing, because that's also another thing, because that conversation is almost, we can go into the specifics of that dialogue, because it's like, he already knows. He already knows. And that's one of my favorite things about that conversation, because it's like, we as an audience, Aslak is just like, I like Dickens' characters, because they're characters that are, they don't really have control over their own fate, and they're just thrown around like by some invisible hand, and it's kind of like a fatalistic moment, like
sure.
And that was kind of also the thing when I wrote the script, that I felt like Aslak is like, even though he's questioning reality and what's going on, he's also kind of like being as a sent somewhere by a force almost, you can feel it, and then he's meeting something, and then in that conversation, and these things comes out somehow, like that it's already like we feel that the questions that are coming, the person asking those questions already knows what's going on in the situation, even though Aslak doesn't know. So
Right.
Aslak is kind of
There's a wisdom. There's a wisdom
Exactly.
and a maturity there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's really quite remarkable.
Yeah.
Quite lovely. And I think it's in the same scene where I couldn't help but smile at my own life because I don't sleep that well. Just let it go and sleep now.
Yeah.
And that's when I went, profound existential sort of questions being addressed in this film, right?
Yeah. Risky stuff, because it can be easily, when you go that, pompous out somehow, but somehow it's very down to earth in some other way. So it worked very well, I think, that scene, and it was a risky scene to do.
In that same scene, and we don't want to give away too much detail, but do you think we go out of our way to avoid responsibility? And you probably know where I'm going with that based on the scene, but this idea that we avoid things that frighten us.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, I think that's a very human existential.
It's easier, right?
Yeah.
It's just easier.
I think it's so many things. And then you can take to so many levels, so many things, like borders, foreigners, all these things that are going in society now. Like what we don't understand, we just have to. And it's the easiest thing that governments play with us as well. Is to bring on those elements that what we don't really understand, they're trying to give some stupid reasoning for it when there's and those things. So that's kind of I think is a very important human, how to say it? Can you help me here? Human.
Yeah, it's an important part of being fully human.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
You could almost say like
well,
that.
this is what I so love about not only the festival, but just film in general, or great stories. Any great story, you mentioned Dickens, and there's so many kid stories and so on, fables, it doesn't matter. They don't have to be true in order to point to truth. And I always love it when people talk about documentary film, well, as if they're truer than a narrative piece, right?
Yeah.
And I think talk about cognitive dissonance. I think there's a real disconnect there, and I don't think that's a philosophical distinction.
No.
I think that sometimes the fictional story can actually speak more truth than some sort of newscast.
Definitely.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go from that's the starting point of filmmaking. Lumiere and Méliès when they started with
magicians, right?
Yeah, with the train, observing the train, and then he had the one the travel into the moon. And that's where it all started.
Right,
those kind of two sides, and you can discuss up and down. And you have Bergman and you have Bo Widerberg, which is like one is the vertical representation, one is the horizontal representation, and it's also very connected to political elements.
Absolutely.
There are so many things we can go into now about how we deal with truth and reality.
So we started the interview on Freud.
Yeah.
How much of would you say filmmaking is going on at a subconscious or unconscious or tacit level implicitly? So you go back and you've watched the film over and over and over. Are you still seeing new layers?
Well, I always say that I try to always, subconsciousness, just don't think too much sometimes and just go for it. Because
which is kind of what the film is about in a way, isn't it? The story. Don't overthink it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't thought about it that much, but in some sense, yeah. But I'm very art and intellectual and spirituality. They're in intellectualism and spirituality or art they're in conflict very often.
Right.
Because if you overthink things or get too stuck in some theory or something, it comes out as something that you are more like a thesis than something true that just comes out of you organically somehow.
Well, do you know what I just had? This is why I think kids are more open.
Yeah.
They understand in a way that adults don't.
Yeah.
That adults no longer. It's as if at some point in our lives, whatever it is, whether it's this empirical, the data, the experience that we have, the pain, the misery, whatever it is, despair, we can't face it. So we turn to mathematics.
Or second-learned information in general.
Or just information and data, right? And we lose the fantasy.
Yeah.
We leave the storytelling behind. We want a true film.
Yeah.
We want a documentary. We want something that resolves.
Yeah.
And I wonder to what degree, and it's interesting that you start with Freud, I wonder to what degree our mental health has gone way sideways because we've avoided this mystery, this wonder, this curiosity, this sense of childlike wonder.
Yeah, and if you go to the old Vedas or the Vedaya, or if you go to all scriptures, books, stories, mythologies, and you look at today, they're all, they look very, if you just go into the depth and what they're trying to say, it's very universal, and you can really find, yourself in them today in a very, simple way if you just go and see what they're talking about in some way. So it's even though now we're now in 2017, 1,000 years ago, they knew already a lot at that time that we're trying to figure out today in some sense, because it's, as you say, the old man's always, what is this, the saying of the old people? They say that even though the more I learn, the less I know.
Right, yeah. There's a line my uncle used to say: "What I know could fill a book. What I don't know could fill a library."
Yeah.
I think was his line.
Yeah.
And I only heard that a few years ago. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're speaking a lot about as well. And I think also you can look at that about all evolution in general. And,
sure.
And if you go very big on looking on it, actually.
Do you know? I think I'm so loving this conversation and where it's going. But I think it was Einstein who said that something to the effect of that, like a 5-year-old has a better understanding of the universe than a scientist, than a physicist who's been studying it all their lives.
Yeah, and that's a key point here.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they indwell their lives in a way that those folks on the train at 6:45 a.m. who are doing their email don't no longer seem to be able to.
Yeah.
So are you hoping that we're going to get back to that? Is that what you're asking me to do as as I watch Valley of Shadows?
No, I'm not. I don't think so. I think everything in evolution comes, and I'm not this person who says that everything was better before anything like that. No, absolutely. I just think that you have to, go and even over 2017 and all this is this technical or evolution happening. Just when you go into nature and you just experience and feel the presence of life in a very simple way. That's something very true in that as well. I think that we forget about what if you living here and now. It's the cliche things, but I think it's really the most important things there is to really learn how to live in the moment and not just go for the next step all the time. And I'm bad on it, but I'm trying to work on it myself as well. Yeah.
It's a perfect way to end the interview. I so appreciate your time today and so loved your film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And welcome to the festival. I hope you can enjoy it. I hope you're able to dive in.
I'm trying. No, it's the next project, so
there's always the next project.
But I'm trying to,
and we haven't even spoken about that, but maybe we'll leave that for another time. Thank you for a wonderful conversation. Talking today with Jonas Gulbrandsen and his new film Valley of Shadows, world premiering here at the Toronto International Film Festival. Jonas, thanks for the film. Thanks for your time.